On Wednesday, Romania's 10-month-old governing coalition collapsed after the Social Democratic Party formally withdrew its support, with 7 ministers, including Deputy Prime Minister Marian Neaciu, handing in their resignations. Prime Minister Mihail Bolojan is now trying to hold together a minority government in a country with the EU's highest public deficit, with roughly 10 billion euros in EU recovery funds hanging in the balance and a May deadline to sign off on 16.68 billion euros in defense loans. And waiting in the wings is George Simion's far-right AUR party, currently polling at around 35%. So in this video, we're going to explain why Romania's coalition just imploded, why Brussels is genuinely panicking, and what AUR's rise could mean for NATO's eastern flank. If you love staying informed and want some of the best reporting on YouTube, then subscribe and ring the bell for more. So let's start with a bit of context, because to understand this week's collapse, you really need to understand the chaos that produced this coalition in the first place. For context, Romania's 2024 presidential election was annulled by the Constitutional Court in December 2024 after intelligence documents revealed an alleged Russian-backed TikTok campaign that had boosted ultranationalist outsider Călin Georgescu to a shock first-round win. Georgescu was then barred from the rerun, and in May 2025, the centrist pro-European Nicușor Dan, the former mayor of Bucharest, beat AUR's George Simion in the runoff with 53.6% to 46.4%. To contain the far right, Dan then brokered an unwieldy 4-party coalition in June 2025, made up of the center-left PSD, Bolojan's center-right PNL, the reformist USR, and the ethnic Hungarian minority party UDMR. Simion himself called it an unnatural alliance. And, well, 10 months later, he's been proven right. So what actually triggered the walkout? Well, on the surface, it's a budget fight. Romania's deficit hit 9.3% of GDP in 2024 and 7.9% in 2025, by far the worst in the EU, and Bolojan has been pushing through an austerity package targeting a 6.2% figure for 2026, including pension reforms, public sector wage cuts, and tax hikes. PSD framed this as an attack on its core voters, and on April 20th, the party voted 97.7% to withdraw support, with leader Sorin Grindeanu calling the coalition a deadly political trap. 3 days later, 7 PSD ministers resigned, covering labor, justice, agriculture, energy, transportation, and health. But the real reason, we think, is electoral. PSD has been hemorrhaging support to AUR for months and now polls at around 20%, while AUR sits at roughly 35%. The way analysts in Bucharest see it, PSD calculated that staying chained to an unpopular austerity prime minister was guaranteeing further losses to the far right ahead of the 2028 election, so distancing themselves now was the only survival play. Notably, PSD has not actually called for snap elections. They appear to want Bolojan replaced, presumably by a technocrat, while keeping the broader pro-European coalition alive. So, why is Brussels panicking? Well, broadly speaking, there are 3 things the EU stands to lose if Bucharest stays paralyzed. First, around 10 billion euros in EU recovery funds. Romania's national plan expires at the end of August 2026, and 14 essential reforms, including a new public sector salary law worth roughly 770 million euros on its own, require parliamentary majorities Bolojan no longer has. Second, and arguably more urgent, Romania is in line for 16.68 billion euros under the EU's Safe Defense Loan Facility, one of the largest allocations to any member state, but every contract must be signed and ratified by Parliament before May 30th. Defense Minister Radu Măruță has flagged that some suppliers are already pricing in 30% increases at the point of signature, and if the political deadlock holds for even a few weeks, those funds may be lost outright. Third, Romania is the EU's anchor on the eastern flank. Mihail Kogălniceanu Air Base on the Black Sea is being expanded into what's projected to become NATO's largest European base by 2040, and in January, NATO activated a second major Ukraine logistics hub on Romanian soil to complement Rzeszów. And it's worth noting that all of this comes just 4 days after Bulgaria's Rumen Radev won an absolute majority on April 19th, and with Slovakia's Robert Fico already blocking EU action on Ukraine. If AUR converts its 35% polling lead into actual influence in Bucharest, the EU could find itself with a Fico-Radev-Simion Axis on its eastern flank, Three veto-wielding obstacles, just as Hungary under Peter Magyar has finally started pivoting back towards Brussels. The three plausible scenarios from here are Bolojan's minority government clinging on, a technocratic compromise cabinet, or, least likely given that Romania has never held a snap parliamentary election in its post-communist history, early elections. Whether Bucharest resolves this before the May safe deadline will tell us a lot about whether Brussels can keep its eastern periphery aligned, or whether the eurosceptic wave on NATO's eastern flank is now a genuinely structural problem.